Hello and welcome to Stones and Thrones. My name is Nicholas A. Venna, and this is my show. I analyze and talk about current events in society, culture, and political news in pursuit of the good things to which we can hold fast and build upon, stone by stone, until myself and like-minded individuals have thrones that last. Occasionally, I'll be responding to some stones thrown at me, and sometimes I'll be throwing some stones of my own. Jumping into this next episode, I wanted to follow up on the coattails of the show that I did yesterday, where the focus was the Lindsay Clancy trial and some of the broader implications of the trial itself, and in particular, the broadest implications of whatever the jury finds, whether guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity. Today, I'm going to jump into a little bit of a sidebar, though, because these two issues are intimately connected. There was a collaboration between Hanna Pearl Davis at Pearly Things, and Jason Evert, who is a chastity speaker for a couple of decades now. And watching that really just kind of blew my mind and helped contrast what men are being taught and have been taught for decades versus what women are being taught or not taught for that same number of decades, and the implications and the fallout from that contrast, and how astonishingly still today people are just utterly blind to it. And by people, I mean the very people who should be illuminated and eyes wide open, considering the position that they're in and the volitional choice they've made to act and stand as educators, guides, and teachers regarding these exact issues, the dynamic that is between men and women. If you are a young man or a young woman, specifically if you are a young man or young woman who is Christian or leans Christian or attempts to practice Christianity, most specifically if you are a young man or woman who is Catholic, especially as it relates to the mission of the church as a whole, then you have to understand the blind spots of these two polar opposites on the right. The furthest to one side that you could be versus the furthest to the other side that you could be, where the core agreement just seems to be that there is an inherent dynamic between male-female relations, and there is an inherent dynamism within males and within females that plays into the relational dynamic, and that there is value in properly understanding those dynamics so that in practice you could have a successful and or fruitful or otherwise beneficial outcome in the relationship, or outgrowth of the relationship, or byproducts of the relationship, both from a personal fulfillment sense and a societal benefit sense. So anyway, let me jump into this. This is the end of the collaboration right here.
For women, though, it's got to, like, the church has got to start talking about female sin. And that's like the number one way women are doing it now. It's social media. I never see the churches call out women dressing half naked on it, ever. I mean, they'll do it to church. I see them at the churches nowadays, dressed half naked, and the men are too weak to call them out. Yeah. So, like, we need to have more conservatives talking about female sin. The men have heard it. They know. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, we just put out a video a couple days ago on modesty and women in bikinis if they're Christian. We're not afraid to speak out on it, not because we're shaming the women, but rather male modesty is an issue too. And I think we.
Okay. And this is how it's going to be, because they're firing back and forth, rapid fire for this entire collaboration. So if nothing else, it's incredibly dense. But this is what happens for the whole 90 minutes plus, the whole time. These ironical, self-contradictory statements such as, oh yeah, yes, no, we definitely need to talk about female sinfulness. We need to talk about things like immodesty and dressing essentially naked in public. And in fact, I agree with you. And we just did. We just put out something on that recently on female immodesty. And, it's not like we're shaming them. We're not shaming them. That's not what's happening. But because men are immodest too. And at some point, really, it's just like, for fuck's sake, Like, for fuck's sake, can we just be straight about this issue? That is a bona fide demonstration of fear of calling out women. It's like you cannot criticize anything that is native to the female disposition, albeit under the, circumstances of original sin and concupiscence, if you're a Christian. Otherwise, you just believe this is the overall female disposition. But you can't call it out without some qualifier. And that is exactly what these right-wing Christian men continue to do, to the detriment of themselves, to the detriment of the women who buy into this bullshit about their moral superiority and their fragility, and the men who get duped into walking into these marriages that are fucking calamities. It is a landmine. And everybody who cares is just really, truly sick and fucking tired of this apologetics. And listen, I will point, I've met Jason Evert. I knew him in college. I spent time with him. I played over the line with him down in San Diego. He is in my personal opinion, from my limited personal experience with him for the several years that I was there and around him and hanging out with him, I believe he's a wholesome person. I believe he's a moral person. I believe he's a decent Catholic by any standard. And I recognize that he is, generally speaking, faithfully adheres to the precepts of the church, the teachings of the church, orthodox. So I'm talking about ideas and statements here. It just so happens that he's saying them. And I think there's an incredible amount of influence that drives this. But someone has to call it out, because these ideas are, first of all, shit. They are shit. And they're fucking dangerous. This constant apologizing and this industry of apologetics for female superiority, female fragility, and the risks and dangers of calling them out for their bullshit. And it is catastrophic to society, catastrophic to men, and it's actually catastrophic to women too. And there's a perfect example of it right there, and it happens over and over and over again. And I just want to set the stage up front. These are not personal attacks. It's not a personal anger directed towards the person who's speaking these things, but these ideas are fucking atrocious, and the ideas themselves literally need to be murdered. They need to be murdered, annihilated, extirpated from the public lexicon. And if we can't do that, then there's absolutely no excuse whatsoever not to completely annihilate it and excommunicate these ideas and thoughts from any Christian sphere, most of all from a Catholic one, because we're the ones who are supposed to have the more comprehensive and thorough truth. Every fundamental argument of a Catholic against a Protestant is we have the wholeness of the truth, the fullness of the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And these types of sentiments are heresies. They're not material, overt, vivid, factual, theological heresies where you're just asserting something that is explicitly opposed to the clear teaching of the Catholic Church, but they are sentimental heresies where the implications of these statements themselves and the inferences, the only inferences that could be made from these statements, are in fact heterodox and heretical. And we have to call it out. Just, my goodness, please. We have to call it out. The last thing I will say, Jason Evert is, he is theologian. He is credentialed as a theologian. He did at some point work for Catholic Answers. He understands Catholic teaching. His expertise, as I've always understood it, and in my experience, he's always represented it as far as this specialization and expertise is as a chastity speaker, someone who argues on behalf of chastity, someone who argues for the value, the benefits, and the morality of chastity, someone who argues for the theological foundations and necessity of chaste behavior if you want to live a Christian life and have a fulfilling relationship or a fulfilling and satisfying marriage. That's the expertise. And lastly, I will qualify that when I say fulfilling and satisfying marriage, I'm not talking about a personal fulfillment and a personal satisfaction. I am talking about the corporate fulfillment and satisfaction that you should get from performing your part in the overarching mission of the church. And in a broader sense, the mission of Christianity and Christian ethics and morality, and in the broadest sense, the mission of what is supposed to be conservatism and the conservative political movement, insofar as it's supposed to be rooted in and based upon family values. You cannot have family values if you do not have a family, and you cannot have a family if you don't understand how to make it work or what constitutes a family. You cannot have what constitutes a family without a father and a mother, a husband and a wife, properly speaking, in a Christian sense and in a broader sense, even now in a legal sense. You can't have a family without mother and father first. And so if those two do not know how to view each other, relate to each other, and navigate the dynamics of the differences between them in light of the inherent or innate or at least leanings of specific defects, then the whole thing collapses. And if we can agree on anything, can we not agree that we are already in a state of collapse? And so if you're saying the same things now in the same way that you were 25 years ago, you are missing the bigger picture.
We both need to work on this virtue.
But it's not the same. Like that's almost like feminism right there. Because
totally
you keep
feminism.
Saying, every time I talk about female
feminism.
sin, we always have to say men. Why? It's a female sin. Men
what's
don't.
A female sin?
Immodesty is a female sin.
The immodesty of a man's intentions could be far more immodest than any outfit she could ever put on. And so, what's the cause of robbery? The presence of jewelry in the window of the store, or the presence?
Dude, can we? Okay, so again, like I said, this thing's rapid fire. So what she says, and mind you, like Pearl is out there basically, at the very least, saying you can't even criticize active consumption of pornography. Okay. So she is not taking this hyper conservative, religious and moral high ground. Okay. She's speaking from a very, I would say almost anthropological sense to the exclusion of these Christian moral principles. She's essentially a conservative to the exclusion of just these Christian moral principles, and has sort of made a career nowadays anyway in calling out the hypocrisy of these conservative Christian men. But notwithstanding all of that, here she is making a simple concrete point. Modesty, okay? Modesty. And she's trying to simply establish just something without a qualifier or a but men too. And she says, yeah, walking around in a bikini, essentially being almost naked except for your nipples and the labia of your vagina. Isn't that immodest? Isn't there something bad about that? Does that not qualify as like an immodesty? And his response then is the intentions of male immodesty, whatever the fuck those words even mean, if they fucking mean anything at all. That's the expression, the intentions of male immodesty, so let's just take for granted that means something, are far worse than the female's immodesty could ever be. So if you were waiting bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for what the hell that means, then you and I are in the same boat. Well, the first thing we get from there is this. Now we move into analogy territory, and it's like, well, what causes a robbery? Isn't causing a robbery like laying out the jewelry? Now, I didn't listen to anything after that because we're at this point, there's only roughly 3 minutes to 4 minutes left in the whole collaboration, and I have been getting browbeat by this female supremacy the entire time, and honestly, it just didn't need any more. Only had so much energy, and I really wanted to get into this episode here. So, but I imagine that the thinking is going to go like this. The jewelry is out there. It has this intrinsic value. It could be enticing. Now let's compare that, the setting out of the jewelry, to the intention of the would-be or soon-to-be robber. And it's going to be like, well, the robber now, what about the robber who then, seeing these goods, these valuable items, this jewelry, decides I am going to go take it by force, okay? So notice the comparison we get. In this case, I'm going to guess, I'm going to speculate, I'm going to opine or make a little gentleman's wager that in this analogy, the setting out of the jewelry is the woman. That's her little tiny baby. You couldn't even call it a sin. Maybe it's just an advisable. I don't know. And then, but I'm pretty sure that the analogy in this situation, that's the female. And then the robber, the aggressive, violent, uncontrolled, salivating wolf with his tongue hanging out of his mouth, robber, is going to be the male. And here's the kind of shit that has been going on for a quarter of a fucking century. And that, like, I know I'm tired of it, and Gen Z is tired of it, which is why they don't buy into it. So this is especially for anybody who's hearing this and all of a sudden you're now second guessing, like, oh, am I being too harsh? Am I missing the picture? Am I not Christian if I like see women for what they are and in such a way? And if I'm kind of tired of being proselytized to as the male, as if I am nothing but just an infinite list of defects against her perfections, and the innocuity of everything that might be a sin, but it's really not, because something in her is innocuous when it comes to intention and will and motivation and whatever else, then you're with me. I wouldn't want you to be tempted to think that this is a manipulative, semantic lie, okay? Because when a jeweler sets out the jewelry, they're conducting business. There's nothing objectively or inherently evil to do it. When you set out jewelry in your showcase because that's your business, you are merely putting on display the things that you are selling transactionally. This is available to you if you have the money that's represented by the little tag affixed to the jewelry by a string. It's a business. There's nothing inherently evil or objective about it. And of all the people walking by, window shopping, seeing this display, the ordinary counterpart to that is the looker. Not the fucking robber, the looker, okay? The one who's looking at it, considering its value, considering whether or not it's worth the exchange as articulated on the fucking price tag affixed to the jewelry with a piece of string. So this analogy already sets up this comparison with a fully baked in, blossomed and exploding bigotry towards men by making this association of this inherent contrast between the violent, salivating, tongue out of his mouth robber and the innocent, motivational innocuity of the female who's just daintily, this is just her jewelry. Fuck it.
Absolutely not.
Greed in the heart of the robber.
No, women get naked far before men even ask them to. I go to gyms, the men will look down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, come on.
No, it's appalling.
The men are looking down, trying not to look at the women.
So, it's so appalling. I agree with you. Even though everything I just said clearly indicates I'm not supporting what you're saying. I am impeaching it and contradicting it, or at the very least equivocating it. You cannot say something about a female defect or a defect that is native to the female personality without me counterpunching. I simply can't hear it. I cannot listen to something that articulates a defect in femininity or fallen human nature, specifically as it relates to being a woman, or otherwise without some type of equivocation. At best, most of the time it's an over the top, like he just did. A man's even worse. Oh yeah, a woman does that, a man's even worse.
Women get naked first, far before the men even ask them to.
She's in the mirror with her phone and dressed up.
That's what I'm saying. Women are the predators. Mm-hmm. We got to stop treating them. Most of the time they are. Yeah. So it's like, we got to stop talking about porn. Men know. Most men aren't excited that they're watching porn. It's kind of an L. They couldn't get a girl. Yeah.
It is.
They're not excited. They know.
Yeah.
Do you know who doesn't know? Women, how detrimental their social media habit is.
Yeah.
So it's like for every, so I just would like conservatives. I think, like, I don't know why none of them will talk about this stuff, but it's just,
No, I'd like you to keep speaking on it because social media just rots you.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the rule of thumbs I try to give young adults is only use social media standing up. Don't use it lying down. Because if you're throwing that up, 45 minutes go by, whoa, where did my life just go?
Married women, no pictures on social media. No pictures. Stop torturing your families.
What about single women? Do they put pictures on social media?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're single.
Okay, because you're putting yourself out there to be...
Yeah, to be found. But once you're married, you put it away.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's your... Okay. But what if they're putting pictures that they're not doing it to be found? They're just like sharing with their friends on Facebook.
They torture the kids by posting their family on social media and invading privacy.
So hopefully, at least, like, this is where only honesty can save you. Only the truth can set you free. If you're a Gen Z female, you know, right? You know that even when you put stuff on social media and you're just sharing with your friends, you know that it's competitive, right? You do know that you are not going to post some picture of yourself that you have already predetermined your peers are going to look at and then view you as less as a result of it, right? You do know that it's not just sharing, right? Because if it's just sharing, you could also wake up in the morning, discover this massive crater on your forehead and this hideous physical abomination somewhere on your body. And then in your moment of anguish, you could share that on social media just with your friends, right? You're not trying to lure anybody in. And don't we all know, like, women are certainly comfortable, at least ostensibly, with sharing information with their friends that might elicit, say, sympathy or attention. So women are willing to, fully capable of, and often do share maladies, certain types. So we do know, right, when we hear these words and we hear this sort of a smugness in sentiment, and again, I'm attacking the idea, I'm attacking the sentiment, I'm not trying to attack the person. I've already said what I said, but when you hear the smugness in, like, well, they're not just doing it to share. It's like, no, they're not. Actually, they're not. There is no evidence they're doing it to share. There's a whole bunch of evidence that they are not doing it to share, and it does not take a very deep analysis of the content. You don't need a fucking AI program and a sentiment analyzer to try to evaluate what's the likelihood that's what's shared among peers on social media would reduce the image of the sharer in the eyes of the viewers. Low. It's low that someone's going to intentionally do that. What they will share will elicit something of value to them. So it is not about sharing. We don't have to whitewash every last fucking behavior of a woman.
The kids' privacy.
No, I don't recommend parading around your children.
I'm sure I don't think you guys do that. Yeah. But there's a lot of women that do.
Yeah.
And like I've seen women, especially in the conservative circles, like it's terrible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully their intentions are good and just wanting to show people, hey, a beautiful family is possible.
Why? What? Think about even that statement. Think about that statement. Why do we hope their intentions are good? And you'll get to hear it, but when we go over the male defects and the things that men might do that's sinful or destructive to themselves or other people, when that comes up all throughout this thing, you will notice that never once is the assertion made, well, hopefully his intentions were good. Why do we hope that the intentions are good? This is the great thing about psychology, because most people are blind to their own psychology. The vast majority of people are utterly blind to their own psychology. And the benefit that provides to people who really are in tune with psychology is you can see what the person is blind to, you can see what the person is hiding, you can see who the person really is. At the very least, you can see what this person is actually expressing. Even if it's not who they are and you don't want to go down that route, which I've already said I'm trying not to, you can see what the person is really saying. So why? Why do we hope that her intentions are good? Well, because if her intentions aren't good, then you're going to have a sort of shocked and uncomfortable reaction. Like, how could that be? Who would do that? Why would she do that? Well, then the next question comes up. Well, regardless of why she would do it or how she could do it or who would do it, based on what reason are you surprised that she did it? What is it that surprises you about the fact that she did something self-serving, immoral, immodest, contrary to conservative or Christian values, contrary to the teachings of the church, to the disadvantage of anybody that would look at it, and to her own advantage? Like, well, isn't that the answer? Do we really need to say, why would she do something that's advantageous to her and potentially harmful to other people? Why? Well, for the same reason that anybody would do something that's harmful to somebody else and beneficial to themselves. Precisely fucking because it's beneficial to themselves and they don't give a shit if it's harmful to another person. Unless it's out of malice, in which case they want to harm the other person. Those are the two categories. If I'm willing to do something that's to my benefit and to somebody else's detriment, then either A, it's for my benefit, B, it's for their detriment, or C, if I'm really special, it's for both. Are we surprised at this?
I'm with you.
If you
Shut
get
it off as most as possible.
Intentions, who cares?
Yeah.
Results.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think we're at about time. Did you have fun?
I did.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming out here. And,
I had a great time. Would you want to do it again?
I'd be honored.
Yeah? Okay. Where can they find you? And what, do you have a speaking tour?
Yeah, no, we're traveling globally.
Can we add it?
Okay, you have 2 million followers. So the first 1 million followers is 1,000 set of 1,000 followers. And the second one is the same. So you've got 2,000 followers. So yeah, you can bet your ass it would be an honor to be on the show. Don't read too far into it. Okay, so now that you saw the end, we'll get into some of the beginning. I won't, no one can handle going through the whole thing, which is already 90 minutes plus my commentary, but you got the picture. Now let's just get into some of the things that went in there.
What's up, guys? Welcome to an episode of The Sit Down. Today I have Jason Evert coming on our show. Welcome to the show. He's a chastity speaker. And he actually came to my high school.
Yeah, so. Way back in the day. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. You remember me?
Oh, yeah, you were sitting in the 4th row on the left.
No way, you do not. I was like, come on.
No, I forget my own kid's name, so I don't remember it, but I remember the high
But you don't.
So what's the...
We don't need to do this anymore, guys. Like, not everything needs to be self-effacing. It can't be literally I'm so scared. This is a guy who has been speaking to, with a good ministry, a good message I've already supported, a message of chastity, the teachings of the church, the theological value of the human body, and the exchange between all that good stuff. Okay, I don't need to do it again. But the fear, the default fear, the instinctive fear, I better be careful, because even though I've been doing this for closer to 30 years than 20, and I believe he says that he speaks to over 100,000 people a year. So let's just call it 20 years. 20 times 100,000 is 2 million. And I need to remember you from 2 decades ago. I'm not saying Pearl's putting that out. I'm saying the default disposition that is exposed in the statement of, oh yeah, no, I remember you, blah, 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 blah. So it's compensatory at the same time as it's conciliatory. Conciliatory by virtue of, he didn't just say no, I don't fucking remember you. It's compensatory by virtue of, lightheartedly making a joke, which is, yeah, you were sitting right here in that spot at that time, to which, okay, chuckle. Of course, I mean, if you had that specific of a memory, that would be crazy, right? So it clearly illustrates the point, no, I don't remember you. But then as soon as that message is delivered, even though it was delivered not with a bucket full of sugar, a spoonful helps the medicine go down, but you need a wheelbarrow in the mind of the feminist man, or the man who has been poisoned and destroyed by feminist thought. It takes a wheelbarrow, not for the medicine, just for the fact. Because medicine, when you say a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine goes down, the presumption is that the taste of the medicine is bitter. Okay, well, this is a neutral fact. I don't, in fact, remember you. That's neutral before you get into the reality that, because it's been 20 years and a minimum of 2 million people. Not to mention, it wasn't even like we met. I was standing up at a podium talking to a whole bunch of you at once. And it still needs to be compensated with but don't, if you have any feelings about it, don't, because I forget my own children's names.
Well, it's kind of like helping out on youth group retreats, and the kids would come up to me and kind of just pour out all the junk that they were going through in terms of just heartbreak and drama, and I just realized they had no formation in human love. Then I did 3 years
True.
kind of like crisis pregnancy counseling.
That's helpful.
I started feeling late.
Anyway, you get through the background. I'm jumping ahead.
Always find out.
Right here, he's just saying if the parents use porn, your kids are going to find it. I agree. Nothing to argue there. This is my one main contention with Pearl. I don't really want to get into it in this show because it sort of contaminates the whole thing. Especially because the way it's always talked about as this male defect. So all I'll qualify and just say no. Do not look at porn to the extent that you can avoid doing it. Don't, because it's catastrophic to you. Okay. As a person, it is catastrophic to you. So that's the only thing I would ever say to men. Also females, don't look at it. It wouldn't do you any good. It would only do you harm. Now, why is it that people do look at it? How is it that they come to, develop an appetite for it? If you're a Christian, then you recognize that's original sin. There's something inherently good to human sexuality as a result of the original sin, the effects of which we still have. We have disordered appetites. Food is inherently good. That's how come we can eat it until we die, because of that disordered appetite. Sexuality is inherently good. That's how we can do it and then decide to kill our babies or to do it without any thought whatsoever of having children, except for let's do everything we possibly can not to have children. That's why exercise is inherently good. And there's people who actually develop diseases like anorexia where they will starve themselves to death. There's a whole bunch of things that are inherently good, but because of the human condition as affected by original sin, we can take goods, approach them and engage with them in a disordered way that actually becomes destructive to us. And even though every single good as created by God is inherently in support of the flourishing of life, we can engage with all of those goods in a way that makes it become deadly. Okay, so if you're religious or not, it doesn't even matter. If you understand, if you don't eat, then you will die. If you eat too much, you can kill yourself. It's that simple.
Becomes the son's, and when the daughter finds the dad's porn collection, she could get hooked, or she could just feel completely sexually unsafe.
But how?
Oh, phones, internet search histories, you name it. The kids always find it.
Pearl's just asking, how could they find it? It's like, dude, they find it, okay? It's inconvenient when you're arguing on behalf of men's right, or no one can bother them about looking at porn, or it's somebody else's fault that they do it. Then it becomes really inconvenient when you start representing some serious potential consequences of it, even if someone accepts your argument that okay, it's no big deal, it's totally fine, which is asinine. But even if someone does accept that, then they would still raise objections okay, but then what about children? Because they do, in fact, always will. Nothing would ever stop them from getting to that content in your home if you bring it there. I agree. They're going to find it. They talk about this for a long time. It's not necessary. Kids find it. If you are Gen Z, kids find it because you found it.
Paul shouldn't have written 1 Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind.
Yeah, I'm not that religious.
Or how about David? How about all the Psalms? He was a murderer.
So on this part, they just go this piece where Pearl, again, early on, these are things that she does. It's just like, come on, you're cutting your own legs off here. But she's now arguing anybody who has manifest or been immersed in or committed any sorts of sins, I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from the people who didn't do it. And she's saying this in support of her argument that reformed female porn stars should not be, pastors running churches. They shouldn't be the highest profile person at your church. They should not be like lifted up and elevated as if there's something special. She views it as this is bullshit. That's a have your cake and eat it too. You went around when you had the ability to do it, when you were at max value in this hypergamous sense of your physical beauty. You hoard yourself out. You lived it up. You loved it. And now that you're deteriorating, the food is getting past its expiration date. Now you want to transition over into the Christian Reformed LARPist, and you are doing this in a predatorial manner to all those stupid ass, ridiculously uneducated Christian right young men who view you as innocent when you are in fact a wolf. And now you are a different form of predator. First, you were committing these acts of predation on these young men, unsuspecting, by flashing your body all over the place because you knew that they have this innate, extreme difficulty controlling their passions, just staring at a naked woman and then not having any sort of intense sexual arousal. And now you're going back and you're preying on their desire to have a loving Christian woman who would actually value them and help them build a wholesome household. It's just another step of the predation. That's what she's saying. And Jason just raising the argument of, well, like now that you've gone so far as to say nobody who's ever committed any type of sin should ever be able to preach to anybody else. Well, what about St. Paul, who was in fact guilty of murder as Saul in the New Testament, the book of Acts, before he became St. Paul and then opened up all the churches and, became the greatest apostle? And what about David, who committed the act of adultery with Bathsheba and then returned to his seat in the kingdom, and after having been disciplined and punishment, established a kingdom that God himself said it was after his own heart. So this is the debate there. It's still not as significant. It's these two extremes that are getting counterproductive to the points they're trying to make.
I don't want to hear from
the whole book of Psalms.
No, I don't want to hear from him.
But Paul, there goes half the New Testament.
I guess it's gone. I'll be consistent here.
Yeah.
No, once you've done certain life choices, I don't want to hear from you. I'd rather hear from the people that did it personally.
But what about pride?
And I'm not sure that. The other thing, too, is I don't think that a porn star is the same thing as Paul. We got to stop giving...
Yeah, okay, so that's the real argument. I realize just by default, she's not as quick on her feet as he is with wielding these arguments, but that's the actual answer. The actual answer is there is no comparison between Nala and St. Paul. There is no comparison between a reformed porn star drug addict and David, who's writing the Psalms, okay? When we are reading these New Testament letters, mind you, this is all disingenuous, and I don't like it because I know that Jason Evert has debated as an apologist with Protestants, where he's arguing about this notion of sola scriptura being itself unbiblical and antithetical to the life of the church, or, the Bible alone is this ruling authority, in support of the Catholic Church's teaching, which is, no, it's a combination of tradition and scripture. And in fact, the most accurate Catholic position is the Bible you're trying to say is a greater authority than our Catholic Church is a product of the Catholic Church. We wrote it, we own it, we translated it, we preserved it. It's our book, not yours. And that's true. Why? Well, because there's a whole bunch of letters that were written in those early decades after the death and resurrection of Jesus. A whole bunch of them. Hundreds, if not thousands, okay? You're talking about the Bible being formally canonized a number of times, 400 years after the fact. So as many letters and gospel narratives of the life of Jesus and the origins of the church there were is what they had to comb through in order to arrive at, these four and these letters. The point being, what do they say about those four? They're inspired divinely by the finger of God, the Holy Spirit himself, writing through the instrumentation of the apostle or saint who's writing it. Okay? So there's a human being who's fingers and hands are holding the pen or the quill and dutifully and diligently translating these scriptures, preserving them for the future of the church, but they are divinely inspired. That's why these ones are in the Bible and those ones are not, because those ones we see as like human in some form or another, but these we see as divine, as no word in it did not come directly from and as willed by God himself. And every word that is there is directly from and as willed by God as an inerrant, infallible, unimpeachable, holy scripture of God. Okay? That's how the church views it. So now we're taking the guy Paul, and we're not talking about that divine inspiration that's actually the Holy Spirit through Paul. We're not talking about the Psalms, which all the mystics of the church basically say are the greatest prayers of the church, one of the most useful tools that are fundamentally bedrock to contemplative prayer, the highest union that any human person could get with God while here on earth. That's essentially heaven on earth, the possession of the kingdom of heaven on earth. We're not talking about, now we're just talking about, David, look, he wrote the Psalms, and Paul, look, he wrote the New Testament, and those were sinners. It's disingenuous. Like, we're comparing that to the porn star who's preaching now on stage, telling everybody, like, if you want to know what God thinks and says and wants of you, come to me, I'll tell you. Much less as a Catholic. Fuck that.
Interview these women, and they literally think they're Paul. They literally think, when you say stuff like that, they take this and they use it to lecture everybody.
Seriously.
Tortured.
Now, are you a hypocrite because your past is different than your present? Or because your preaching is different than your present?
So more semantics, like, okay, the answer is no. Just because you live today differently than you lived back then, that doesn't make you a hypocrite. Okay, we all know hypocrite is do as I say, not as I do. So naturally, if somebody's up there and it's like, oh, I used to do, that's why you can trust me, because I used to behave that way and now I'm no longer behaving that way. How about, like, do we have to take your fucking word for that? How about that? Do we have to take your word for that? Can we question that? I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking, like, on paper, it sounds practical. Like, oh yeah, you used to bang a different guy for every hour of the day that you were awake, and you only went to sleep after you overdosed on some barbiturate. But now I just have to take your word for it that, like, even though all of these normal, ordinary people who never lived the life of degeneracy and debauchery and, mind-destroying sin like you did, I can be skeptical of when they say things that don't seem to comport with common sense. For no other reason than, I should really test and scrutinize everything. But when you say it as a reformed heathen, now it's gospel? Like, can I question that? Whatever.
A penance period of like 20 years.
Okay.
So you need.
So again, all this just becomes sort of arbitrary, blah, 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 moving on.
Come under that mission. But guys aren't living out their mission. Women aren't. It's just this endless.
What do you mean?
Heads.
You talk to married couples? You do, don't you?
Endlessly. I get the emails.
What are you talking about? Women don't listen for no reason all the time. I grew up in a Catholic area. Mm-hmm. The standard is them not listening. That is the norm for no reason.
100% true.
A good husband.
100% true.
You have a great husband that does everything right, and the wife still won't listen. Yeah. So to act like it's because the husband isn't following it, that's not true. There's husbands that do everything right, and the wife doesn't listen. No, you're true. So, like, what then?
Yeah, I think a lot of that happens to be her upbringing. She saw independence.
Yeah, so now we're qualifying it again. There's always an explanation, and it's never inherent. Or the guilt. It's never inherent to the person who does it. In this case, it's never inherent to the wife that does it or the female that doesn't. It's always because of something else. So as soon as she says, no, it's the norm. It is a normative and standard disposition in a household of a family where the wife ignores and opposes the husband. That's just the fact. And first, he speaks as if that's not the case. Then when she calls him out with the disposition of like, are you serious? Can you really be serious? Do you not talk to married couples? Have you ever, I mean, you do talk to married couples. So are you really saying this? And then now, after speaking in such a way that you could only conclude that that's not the norm, now it's like he just skips past the, yes, I was wrong, it is in fact the norm, and immediately goes to presenting the defense on their behalf. That reduces their culpability, and that otherwise basically says, yes, but it's because of their household. Like, because of who? Their mothers? So really what you're saying is, like, when the answer actually is, oh yeah, no shit, these bitches are absolutely belligerent. In fact, it's a generational disease. It's been around for generations. We are generations deep into this total rebellious, anti-biblical, anti-societal, anti-familial belligerence.
And I can't have any man control me, or I'm going to lose my freedom and I'll get taken advantage of. And so I'm going to just be obstinate and defiant.
Wait, say that again?
That I'll lose my freedom if I let a man tell me what to do. Because there's a distrust at the core of that connection.
Right, yeah.
That's probably, she's living out of a wound. Mm-hmm. It's not to, dismiss any accountability she has in it, but it's like, okay, where's she coming from?
Not to dismiss any accountability that she has in it. However, because of these things, you can't hold her accountable. And again, as you go through, you will find that never once in this entire 90-minute sequence, and I can pretty much speculate reasonably that never once in the last 25 years that these talks have been given to kids all over the country, that it was the same. That the entire diabolical feminist foundations woven through and through all of these otherwise actual, factual, beneficial, theological teachings of the church poisoned everything, conditioning society to view women first and foremost as without any defects at all. And then if that fails, then conditioning everybody to see those defects as things for which they are not culpable, that is somebody else's fault, generally speaking, and almost all the time, men. And then thirdly, for good measure, to add on that all of the male defects is because of their own willed choice to be losers or failures or bad. And then on top of that, the fourth layer of condemning and convicting men for the defects they don't even have at all, or looking at behaviors that are not actually defective, they are in fact good, and then calling those behaviors not good, treating them as defects, and then removing that masculinity from society. And if you think, well, gee, that sounds like it makes sense, but how do we know for sure? Look at the world today. How does it look? Does it seem better than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago?
This mentality that if I trust this man I've given my life to, that he's going to take advantage of me, there's a trust wound there that is not getting addressed. And so she's living out of that wound, that place of brokenness.
But I don't even think it's that. I think it's selfishness.
Yeah, it is selfishness.
Selfishness and brokenness. And
it's always like, here's the delineating factor. If you're female, it's brokenness. If you're male,
we don't want
it's evil.
It's because we
okay, I feel she is wrong. And he's like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. And we don't really know how to communicate. We're totally trying to figure it out.
I would tell the counselor to go fuck himself. But you're going to tell.
Yeah, men know how to communicate.
Tell another man how to.
Men know how to communicate. We communicate better, more direct.
We get to the cash register, and the guy's like all frazzled. I'm just seeing our kids bouncing all over the place, and he could tell we were kind of stressed. And he's like, whoa, he said, I'm a really patient person because I have no kids.
Yeah.
And I laugh, and I'm like, well, that's saying you have a lot of endurance body.
That's
but
true.
if I fall in love with who she is as a human being, that can never be, I get to keep that for...
All that stuff is just dumb.
Neither, so they might have...
So they're just progressing, and Pearl's basically making the argument now of just like, dude, men get nothing out of marriage. And they're setting themselves up for destruction, which is all true.
hard job in society.
Oh, yeah.
And she can't respect him because he watches porn sometimes.
He's not respecting himself.
That's ridiculous.
He's not respecting women.
That's ridiculous.
Respect isn't something you demand. It's something...
Yeah, so this is also a theme. It's the same thing. It's just like, look, I don't agree with her. Pornography is like a poison pill. But for you, for the guy who's consuming it or the girl who's consuming it, consume it to your own detriment. You're ruining yourself. But we only ever talk about it in terms as the guy who does it is disrespectful to himself and the woman. It's like, dude, even that, we can never just go all in and say, no, it's disrespectful and detrimental to himself. He's not disrespecting her. She is luring him in for his money and selling it to him. She's exploiting. So whenever something, any native vulnerability to the feminine psyche that is either directly, indirectly, intentionally, or unintentionally somehow inured to the benefit of a man who's interacting with her, well, then he becomes the predator. She's the damsel in distress. Any native vulnerability to women is viewed as this super precious, sensitive topic. They could never be. But then on the other side, when it's like men, any native vulnerability is turned into a native, animalistic, diabolical evil. Right? So his inclination to have like a sexual reaction to a naked woman is somehow because he's evil. He's this disgusting animal beast, doesn't respect himself, doesn't know how to respect women, and blah, 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 blah. And that's how so the vulnerabilities of women, we should feel sorry for them. The vulnerabilities of men, we should hate them and fucking destroy them. This is feminism, and this is coming from the Catholic chastity speaker for 3 fucking decades. You should be enraged by this if you are a young man, and they haven't even gotten into the slave contract that is a civil marriage and the indefensible interconnectedness between the Catholic churches in this country and in the West who won't even marry you in a church without a civil license. It's indefensible, it's disgusting, and it is condemnable. It just never gets condemned. Somebody's got to do it.
In my opinion, your lifestyle should merit.
Yeah.
Like I'm not having an erotic moment with my laptop because I miss my wife. Oh, respect me. It's like, respect yourself. Turn off the laptop and write a love letter to your wife back.
Okay, well, so we'll just take a break here. It's been almost an hour. I think it's certainly sufficient for one show. It's a good stopping point because this is all the background. This is all we're just like, what are these problems outside of the church, outside of the context of marriage, outside of all the different things that you are encountering or confronted with in a relationship, the relational dynamic between men and women in a relationship or romance is involved in and whatnot. And it's about the innateness and the tendencies and natural dispositions from birth in men and in women, and then the way those things are expressed and how and why and what's responsible for, the eventual playing out of this dynamic between the sexes in a relationship. This is a good cutoff point because now they start to move more into like their solutions, right? His promotion of you should just get married and have kids, and that's what's going to fulfill you. That's what's better for men, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Pearl starts with a more radical, but no, they shouldn't get married. There's nothing in it for them. It's all risk, no reward, and so on and so forth, which is more true than the first assertion. But then she does eventually modify and basically say, how could you do what you do in the field that you do it, with the audience that you have, all these young men and young women, and withhold from them truths that are mission critical when it comes to the actual success of the relationships that you are telling them not only that they ought to do, but that if they don't do, they're exposing themselves to lives of unhappiness and loneliness and an eventual unhappy and lonely death. How can you, in your position, doing what you do with the audience that you have with the solution that you preach, withhold information that actually contradicts your assertion? That no, quite the opposite, really. Walking into a marriage without any of this background knowledge, with a completely distorted, destructive view of women and what they are, how they behave, how they think, what they are willing to and actually do more often than they do anything else, withhold that from them, while at the same time also withholding from the men the actual contractual pitfalls that the state imposes on a married couple, to the radical and abject detriment of the man, and the benefit, the enticing and incentivized benefits for the woman who is willing to destroy her family and her children and leverage her children as weapons against the man, which is pretty much what they almost always do. Nowhere as much as they do it in the Christian communities to these Christian men, because they're the most vulnerable to it, because they are the least educated about it and the most misled and manipulated and brainwashed group of men on the planet today. Nobody is more neglected and abused than your right-wing Christian man. And most of all, and she does get into this a little bit, it's sort of implied, the white men. So the European Christian, wholesome, trying to be a good person man is the man who is the most exposed, the most vulnerable, the most butchered and victimized. And he is who you represent, like you are one of them. And the biggest victim of the lies that you embed in your teachings, and that the truths that you censor and ignore in your teachings, and to against whom you are actually bigoted and prejudicial yourself, because it comes out in almost everything that he says. That's what comes next. But as far as by way of introduction, let's leave it there. We'll get to the second half of this probably before I get to the conclusion of the whole Lindsay Clancy thing, because there was the gift from God on that yesterday, right after I finished my show, when the defense motioned for a mistrial based off the absolutely relevant and essentially indispensable testimony of a witness that the judge had a conniption about and got all pissed off and made the assertion of the exact opposite, that it was improper and irrelevant. So we'll get into that. But by way of preview, basically, as we all know, Lindsay Clancy's defense for murdering her children is that it was this altruistic filicide, the murder, strangulation of her children out of love for them, and her anticipation of shortly thereafter, after killing herself, she'd be in heaven with them. That's her defense. And as she speaks into the children's eyes who she's murdering in the moment, now we know by her testimony to the psychiatrist and what's been presented in the courtroom, that she's saying to her 5-year-old or 3-year-old or 8-month-old, go with God, baby, as she chokes the fucking life out of him like a diabolical serial killer. Somehow that's perfectly appropriate as a defense. I'm not guilty. I violently murdered my children and whispered these satanic things into their eyes as I did it, these innocent little children, because I loved them and was going to be in heaven with them a few days later. That's totally appropriate. That's relevant, except for then questioning her about her Catholic upbringing. That would suggest the exact opposite. Like, well, but if you violently murder your child and whisper satanic things into their eyes while you do it, and then intend to kill yourself afterwards, well, like you would be in hell. Maybe it's too common sense for the courtroom, but the reality is they all know this is the case. And it's the irrefutable proof that this trial is about nothing other than the very huge picture outside of it, and the extremely profitable cash behemoth that adding postpartum psychosis to the DSM represents, and that's what this whole thing is about. Also the history of the judge who's doing it, William Francis Sullivan, the judge in that case who's doing it. So I really wanted to get into that, but since basically the proof was there, I was able to record it and now talk about it. And then I saw this, and they so play in together. So I wanted to do this first. I'll probably do the second half of this, and then lastly get to Lindsay Clancy. So thanks for watching. Follow, subscribe, share with all your friends who hate feminists and rightly ought to. Share with all your friends who are feminists, not because they'll listen, but just so that they know that you hate them. And we'll pick up next time. Thanks for watching. Peace out.